Bosnia and Herzegovina. It's a country that, well, it keeps finding itself back in the international spotlight, doesn't it?
It really does. And right now, you can feel this uh, palpable tension in Europe again.
Yeah, and the core issue, it seems to be this significant threat of Serb separatism, led by Milorad Dodik.
Exactly. And the worry is real that this could destabilize the whole Balkan region.
Our source for this deep dive is a DW News mapped-out video transcript, and it talks about a concerning show of force and defiance from Bosnian Serbs recently.
Right. So today we're going to try and unpack the history here, look at the key players, basically help you understand the roots of this current crisis.
And you know why it's causing so much concern internationally.
Precisely.
So our mission, if you will, is to figure out why Bosnia, why now, what are these deep historical currents, and crucially, what could happen next?
What are the potential consequences? Yeah.
Okay, let's dive in. What's the immediate spark for this latest round of tension?
Well, the central figure really is Milorad Dodik. He's the top Serb politician in Bosnia.
And he's been very open about wanting to unite the Serb parts of Bosnia with Serbia itself.
Extremely open. His statement was pretty stark. We agree that we are one nation, and one day we will be one state. I mean, that doesn't leave much room for doubt about his aims.
No, it really doesn't. And that kind of talk, understandably, has set off alarm bells across Europe.
Absolutely. It's led to the deployment of more EU peacekeeping troops. They're called U4, just to try and, bolster stability on the ground.
Because the underlying fear, the question everyone's asking according to the DW report is, well, could this actually lead to war?
It's a sobering question, isn't it? Especially given the history.
Definitely. And to understand why someone like Dodik would push for separation, we need to get a handle on Bosnia's internal makeup. It's not ethnically monolithic, is it?
Not at all. Bosnia and Herzegovina is a real mix, but that diversity is also central to its challenges.
So who are the main groups?
Okay, so you've got Bosniaks who are mostly Muslim, making up about half the population, around 50%.
Right.
Then you have Serbs, who are mainly Orthodox Christian, that's just over 30%, and Croats, mostly Roman Catholic, making up about 15%.
But it's important to note they all share a Slavic background, similar language.
Yes, exactly. Despite the religious differences, the cultural and linguistic ties are actually very close. It's complex.
And these internal dynamics, they don't exist in a vacuum. There are outside influences, right? Serbia, Croatia.
Oh, definitely. Serbia is a strong backer of the Bosnian Serbs and their political goals, and Croatia supports the Bosnian Croats.
And geographically, Bosnia is right there in the Balkan Peninsula, southeastern Europe, a region known for its, well, volatility.
A region with a long, complicated history, as the source makes clear. And that history, particularly the war in the 90s, it just looms large over everything.
You really can't talk about Bosnia today without talking about the war from 1992 to 1995. It was just devastating.
Brutal. A truly traumatic conflict between those three main ethnic groups we just mentioned. It left deep, deep scars.
The numbers are staggering. Around 100,000 people killed.
That's the estimate, yes. Broken down, it's roughly 62,000 Bosniaks, 25,000 Serbs, and about 8,400 Croats. Just terrible losses on all sides.
And the DW transcript specifically mentions the Srebrenica genocide in '95.
Yes, a horrific event. Over 8,000 Bosniak men and boys systematically murdered. It's been recognized as genocide by the International Court of Justice.
And it took NATO intervention, bombing Serb troops, to finally push towards a peace deal.
That's what ultimately brought the parties to the negotiating table, yes, leading to the peace agreement.
The Dayton Accords. Signed, nearly 30 years ago now in Dayton, Ohio?
Yeah.
And that agreement still defines Bosnia's political reality today. It sounds intricate.
It is very intricate. Dayton essentially split Bosnia into two main political entities. You have the Republic of Srpska, which is predominantly Serb, and then the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is mostly Bosniaks and Croats.
But there's still one country, no hard border between them.
Exactly. No internal border checks. It's one federal country. Sarajevo is the capital for the whole thing. But the key was the power-sharing mechanism Dayton set up.
To try and prevent future conflict.
Right. So Bosnia has this unique tripartite presidency. One Bosniak president, one Serb, one Croat, all serving together.
3 presidents. Wow. You can immediately see how that might lead to political gridlock sometimes.
It certainly can. And then there's another layer, the High Representative.
Yes, the international overseer, essentially.
Sort of.
Yeah.
The High Representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina, Christian Schmidt, holds the post currently. This role was created by Dayton, appointed by international bodies, not elected by Bosnians.
And they have significant power.
They do. They can impose laws, they can cancel laws, all to ensure the peace agreement is upheld. But, as political scientist Damir Kapijic points out in our source, this role is controversial within Bosnia.
How so?
Well, some see it as vital for stability, preventing any one group from dominating. Others view it as, frankly, undemocratic, an imposition on Bosnia's own sovereignty. It's a real point of contention.
So you have this carefully balanced, internationally overseen system designed for peace, but it's clearly under strain. What are the fundamental fault lines causing this instability now?
The DW report really zeroes in on the core disagreement. How should the state actually be organized?
Okay.
Bosniaks generally tend to favor a more centralized, unitary state. They argue it's more efficient and reflects their status as the largest group.
But the Serbs and Croats see that differently.
Very differently. They largely see that as a threat to their own identities and interests. So they push for more autonomy, more decentralization, keeping power within their respective entities or regions.
And this fundamental difference plays out in the politics.
Constantly. Most political parties are aligned along strict ethnic lines. And because of the power-sharing structures from Dayton, each group effectively has veto power. They can block key decisions.
Leading to paralysis.
Exactly. Political paralysis. It makes progress on essential reforms incredibly difficult.
It also sounds like building a common, shared Bosnian identity above the ethnic ones is a major hurdle.
That's a huge factor, the source points out. There isn't really a strong, unifying Bosnian identity that transcends the ethnic divides.
Why is that so hard to achieve?
Well, tragically, generations have grown up in largely separate worlds, separate schools, different media narratives. This has reinforced strong ethnic national identities, Serb, Croat, Bosniak, rather than a shared civic identity.
And these divides have deep historical roots, don't they? It's not just the 90s war.
Oh, much deeper. You have to go back centuries. Medieval Bosnia had competing Christian influences. Then the Ottoman Empire arrived, leading to conversions to Islam, migrations of Orthodox Christians.
Right.
Then under Austria-Hungary, you saw the rise of modern nationalism, often tying religion directly to national identity. Remember, the assassination in Sarajevo that sparked World War I happened in this complex environment.
And then the whole experience within Yugoslavia.
Exactly. All these layers just add to the complexity of the identities and the historical grievances.
And today, Bosnia is caught in the middle of wider geopolitical currents, too.
For sure. Its position is tricky. It borders the EU, but isn't a member. It's not in NATO either. That leaves it feeling, well, a bit exposed, in a weak position sometimes.
And external powers are definitely involved. Russia, for instance.
Yes, the DW report highlights Russia's role as a key supporter of Milorad Dodik.
How does that support show itself?
Through things like political backing, public statements, and importantly, by challenging the legitimacy of the High Representative, questioning his authority. Russia's influence is definitely felt.
And Dodik has allies closer by, too.
Yes, strong ties with Serbia's leadership, naturally, and also with Hungary's Viktor Orban.
So, faced with all this, what's the EU doing? The West.
Well, the EU is clearly worried. As we mentioned, they've boosted the number of EUFOR peacekeepers. And just recently, in 2024, they finally agreed to formally open EU membership talks with Bosnia.
Membership talks. That sounds positive, but is it seen that way on the ground?
There's a lot of skepticism, frankly. As the source notes, Bosnians have heard talk about joining the EU for like 2 decades. Progress has been painfully slow.
Right.
There's even this dark joke about ask a Bosnian where they'll be in 10 years, and they say in the EU, either because they've emigrated or because Bosnia finally joined. It captures that frustration.
But maybe the war in Ukraine has changed the EU's perspective, given them more urgency.
That seems to be the case. There's a growing feeling in Brussels that instability in the Western Balkans is a strategic vulnerability they can't afford, especially with Russia being more assertive. So, yes, perhaps more urgency now.
So looking forward, what are the possible paths for Bosnia? Any glimmers of hope, or is it just more of the same?
The DW transcript offers a couple of perspectives, really. It acknowledges that the Dayton framework needs fixing somehow. On the one hand, the optimists, or maybe the hopeful, suggest that maybe this current crisis, this heightened tension, could actually force some positive changes, perhaps strengthen state institutions in the long run.
And the pessimists?
The pessimists see this as just another crisis, another chapter in the same recurring story of instability that's defined Bosnia for decades. They don't see fundamental change happening.
So the reality is probably somewhere in between?
Most likely, yes. It's complex. The key challenge remains bridging those deep internal ethnic and political divides, especially while navigating all these external pressures.
Okay, so let's try and pull this together. Bosnia and Herzegovina, it's still a deeply divided country, shaped profoundly by ethnicity, still wrestling with the legacy of that awful war,
Hmm.
and fundamentally split on the basic question of how the country should even be organized.
Right, and all of that internal fragility is magnified by these external powers, Russia, the EU, neighbors, all playing a role.
The core tension just persists. Dodik's push for Serb separatism versus the desire, held by many others, for a unified working Bosnian state.
Exactly. And the Dayton Accords, the very agreement that stopped the war nearly 30 years ago, now seems to be both the foundation they stand on and, paradoxically, a major source of the ongoing problems and instability.
It really makes you think, doesn't it, about how powerful historical grievances and these deep ethnic identities can be, shaping politics decades, even generations, after a conflict ends.
Absolutely.
And what role do external powers play? Do they help calm things down, or do they sometimes pour fuel on the fire in places like Bosnia?
That's a critical question.
Ultimately, what does Bosnia's situation tell us, you think, about just how incredibly long and difficult the road to real reconciliation and building a truly shared national future can be?
Something to ponder.